Okay. Hi.
Hey.
We'll get this eventually. I
Yeah,
love
yeah. Your
I
house
love
looks
it.
nice.
Well, okay.
Nice and bright.
Oh, in my background?
Yeah, yeah. Love it.
Oh yeah, it's a virtual
Right.
because otherwise I had to clean. I can't like you can't be seeing the crazy that I'm
Right.
here right now.
I
That's not
thought I would just go with it. What's it what do you think? Is it too dark?
no, I think you're fine.
Okay.
I think you're fine. I actually like the lights. It's kind of fun to look at.
Yeah, well it's like I feel like I've got more lights. I'm right in front the windows right here in front of me, so it's I think it works.
Yeah, no, I think it works. I like it. I dig it. Well, very cool.
Yeah.
So
What's going on today?
I
Busy Friday?
have, all right, I'm going to do we talked about doing confessions. I'm going to do my confession now,
Mm,
which is, and it was brought to my attention by somebody else who is a chronic snoozer, hitting the snooze button every
okay.
morning.
Right.
And her point was if you are doing that, then you are snoozing and procrastinating on your entire life. And that's the first decision you make any day, every day.
If you hit the snooze bar.
Uh-huh. I thought,
Okay.
well, crap. I mean, quite literally, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, all right, I hear
I've been
you.
doing that for a minute. Is that
Uh-huh.
you?
Oh, yeah, because I will build in the hitting a snooze 3 times. Like,
Right.
no joke. I will build that
Okay.
into my morning. Yeah. So long story short, accountability partners are important. So we agreed to not do that. And this week I
Okay.
have gotten up at with my alarm or a few minutes before, a couple times a few minutes
Right.
before.
Yeah.
It has changed my complete outlook on everything. It is the craziest thing because just that one little change
Right.
has made so much difference in my outlook and my attitude in not procrastinating on other things. Like I would not there's no universe where I would have told you that that is what the effect would have been because it's such a small change.
Right.
And yet here we are.
Noticeable for you.
Yeah. I mean, like
Okay.
noticeable, I'm sleeping better. Everything is better because I'm not hitting snooze.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
Go
that's good.
figure. Go
Well,
figure. So I know. What about you? What's going on?
well, I would say things are going pretty well. I think the New Year's like up and rolling for sure. I was ready to turn the calendar, turn the page. I
Yeah.
was usually I'm kind of like I don't know, like not averse to the holidays, but not like it's not something I'm looking for, like the stress of it and all that stuff kind of gets to me. This year I was like ready to embrace it and I was like kind of ready to chill out for a little bit at the end of the year and all that. But my confession would be that I'm doing dry January and it's been successful
Oh,
so far. I haven't, which is basically means no alcohol for the month. It's kind of like a thing. I've done it a few times, like over the past few years. And it's not, I wasn't like, I don't know. It's just kind of like on the calendar. Like Rachel talked about doing it, and so I was like, oh, I'll get down for that. It's been pretty good. We had some champagne on New Year's Day, like on the first. So that was like that's always like
I
the
don't
thing.
start New Year's does
Yeah,
not start New Year's Day because I do the black eyed peas, I do
yeah,
the
dude.
party. It
Yeah.
it starts on the second
So it
for
starts
me.
on the second, right? So that yeah,
Yeah.
that's where it's been. And like what I've done, I'm go ahead and tell you now because I'm probably definitely gonna do it through. I usually do it through January and like probably through February too, just to extend.
Nice.
it. Um,
I can
my
see.
I had like some medical issues from my car accident a few years ago that I
Mhm.
got taken care of like at the end of last year, and that's made like a noticeable difference just in how I get around and feel and what I can do and how I can work out. And I wasn't playing tennis. I wasn't really training the way I'd like to, and all this. I've had to really stop a lot of that and got that fixed in August, and it's been great. So that's been really good, and all those things are going really well. So coming into the new year, like this kind of fits into place too. So it's been really good, and sleep's been a really big part of that too because um, that's been like one of probably the biggest notable things for me. You talk about sleep and like getting some quality C's.
I
That's what
love
it's
that.
all.
That's great. Well,
Yeah.
and by the way, the whole like getting up with your alarm thing came from Mel Robbins. which I
Right.
don't know if you've heard of her. She's actually doing the Keller Williams Family Reunion. She's the speaker, and
Okay.
she's a motivational speaker. She's been listening to her podcast. She's amazing. The other
Nice.
little tidbit, by the way, is statistically people give up on day 19. So you're coming
Okay.
up tomorrow's your day 19, by the way.
Right.
But
Yeah.
people give up and changes that they're
That's
trying to make on day 19. And she's like, it's quitter's day.
that's the day. Yeah.
Yeah, go figure. Who knew? But I'm like, okay, but if you know that day 19 is coming and
Right.
you
You're in.
calculated for it, then you're in good shape.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah. I think you'll be right. When's family reunion? When are you guys doing that? Is that coming up this like here soon?
I'm
Later?
not going this year. Yeah, it's in Las Vegas this year, but I'm not going this year. I'm
Okay.
hoping to go to Mega Agent Camp in August because this will be the first year that it's not coinciding with like the first week of school. I
Right.
mean, it might, but she's off
Well,
at college. Like, I don't need to.
these are
That's
different days. Yeah,
not
these
my
are different
thing
school
anymore.
days.
Right? Yeah,
Right.
different stage of life,
Right.
which was actually one of the things I was going to talk to you about because I mean, we're kind of focusing this year on changes, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the last few years have been crazy, and we know it. I like my numbers. I like statistics. I mean, 2022, we did. There were 40,000 sales in Northeast Florida MLS that were recorded in MLS. Not talking
Hmm.
about off market and things like that. I'm just talking about traditional listed with realtor sales.
Right.
That was this year, 2023, you're closer to 30,000. So it's about 25% less. However, that number, if you look at it, is actually like that's what we were doing in 2018 and 2019.
Right.
And those are decent numbers. So everybody's freaking out over, oh my God, we're not doing what we were doing in this very weird year. I'm so tired of people using 2020, like 2020, 21, and 22 as our benchmarks for things, as if those are reasonable benchmarks to make, because they're just not.
Right. I
Yeah,
saw a
2018,
stat,
2019.
yeah, I saw something in line with that yesterday. I think I saw a video, our daily video that we send around, that listings right now are nationally, almost they're in line with where they were at about this time in 2019 as well, which I thought
Which,
was
by the way, we were already crying that there was no inventory. So we were already in a low inventory market in
right.
2019. And that's difficult to remember.
And
That
so
that
that's
is very.
that would also show an increase, right, from where we've been over those other years, 20,
Yeah.
21, 22.
Oh, right. Yeah,
That was like the
2019 was a
whole
good was a good real estate year by all accounts.
oh yeah.
It wasn't what happened in 2021, which was insane.
Right.
And not repeatable, at least for a long time. We're not going to see those numbers again anytime soon. And we shouldn't.
Right. Wow.
That was not sustainable. That was an odd, driven by a whole bunch of different weird factors market, but
Yeah.
it's
But
not
every year is different anyways, right? And it should be. So it's not
right.
going to be like, oh, we're going to have a repeat of this, or we're going to have a repeat. There really isn't. They may be similar, and you may see some of the same trends, and or the trend may hang on for longer than other times. But at the end of the day, like a new day is a new day.
Oh, exactly. And I mean, look, people still going to get married. They're still going to get divorced. They're still going to have babies. They're still going to graduate from college. All of these drivers that cause people to move are still going to happen.
Right.
This isn't, and we know that. We know that change happens in people's lives. People have financial problems. People have financial gains. All of these things are going to continue to drive the market. And if we're still going to see people graduating and moving on, creating new households, right? New household creation, first time home buyers.
The world's still turning.
The world is still turning. So you were talking about, I think you said you had some products and some down payment assistance and some things going on.
I
What's happening?
think that's been like, I started really keying in closer to that, like in 2016, 2017.
Mhm.
And there was some of it kind of going on then, but it was new to me and kind of stayed there and have kind of been in that place for a few years. And then you kind of we talk about the cycles of what's happened. And I saw, I was reading something a few months ago, and there's a lot of stats out about it, how last year in 2023, and it was through August, half of the buyers across the country were new buyers. first-time buyers, either true first-time buyers or people that maybe had bought before or hadn't owned anything in the last 3 years. That's considered a first-time buyer. If you're,
No kidding.
yes, half. And so in Florida, we have a lot of things going on to help with that. And, you know, any buyer, what you're up against right now, what you've been up against for the last 3 or 4 years in the market, rising prices, tight inventory, high demand, low supply, the whole thing, pressure, right? All of those things are putting upward pressure on not just demand, but also on price. And so you've had that. Then you've had inflation. Then you've had you know, we had bidding wars and all these things, just increased competition.
Mhm.
And so there's not, you know, it's kind of like, what can you turn to? What does the buyer have? What can you do? What do you have to hedge against inflation? What do you have to get in the game if you're trying to get there for the first time? Wages have been flat, right? Historically, always.
Mhm.
And we've had all this inflation, and housing is like really leading the charge with that. So first-time buyer programs, there's a lot available in Florida, with the benefit really being to significantly reduce the out-of-pocket part for the buyer, the
Nice.
cost, just to reduce it. And there's a lot of programs that are there to do it. You can do anything from, at a minimum, if you're a first-time buyer, at least $10,000 to help cover minimal down payment, and sometimes closing costs. Just depending on the purchase price, it's enough to cover at least the down payment a lot of the times. And then you're just put in a position where you have to deal with closing costs. So you kind of bridge the gap a little bit.
Okay.
How do you cover that? Maybe you have that, and maybe you can get a gift for that. Maybe you can negotiate that. Maybe some combination of all those things. All that's fine, but it's been one of the bigger tools. And then also, the state rolled out a plan called Hometown Heroes, which was a huge first-time buyer incentive. It was funded with $100 million in federal money that was earmarked in Florida for new buyers, and it's been wildly popular, for good reason. It
Yeah.
affords buyers the most amount of money, 5% of whatever they're borrowing. So if you take a $300,000 loan, that means that we can reserve $15,000, and the buyer can use that towards whatever they want, towards their minimal down payment, towards their closing costs. They can combine that with money they've got saved up to make a more impactful down payment. So they're borrowing less. So again, a hedge against the higher interest rate.
Okay.
Your down payment, just to, you know, maybe help get your payment more in line with where you want, you know, when you're having to deal with an interest rate that may be higher than what you wanted it to be.
Now,
Because
does Hometown Hero still have funds?
Hometown Heroes, unfortunately, does not currently have funds. They've all been used. And so what happens is that every other week, funds that are reserved but haven't funded yet, if you have a reservation that expires, because they have a shelf life, you have to have, you know, a house under contract. You've got to have a property address to tie it to for us to
Okay.
be able to reserve the money. So when you have that, then the clock starts ticking. We have to get it closed. You know, 30, 45 days is typical, because we have to have the loan sold in the secondary market within 60 days.
Oh,
So
okay.
if that expires and the deal hasn't closed for whatever reason, maybe there was an impasse with negotiations, maybe something came up, maybe the buyers backed out, maybe the seller backed out, then those funds go back. And what the state does is every other week, they take all of the fallout funds and they make those available for reservation. So that's kind of where we're at right now. That started this past week, and it'll be available every 2 weeks until all the money's exhausted. And that's been kind of how it's been rolling for the last couple of months.
Okay. That's awesome. I,
So
I want to.
that's one that's available. And if that's not available, there's alternatives that are very similar that offer the same benefit that are
Oh,
available.
awesome. Okay. Because, like, what, bond program?
Florida bond, yeah, that's for FHA and conventional programs. There's also non-bond programs. The biggest difference is where we have to look at what the income totals are. Some you have to consider household income for anyone over 18 in the home. Other programs you don't. They have more flexibility.
Oh,
Hometown Hero,
like a college student with a part-time job, you'd have to consider their income.
you've got to consider that, or a
Wow.
relative that lives in the home, or really anything else. Your spouse maybe that's not on the loan, or whatever. So there's a lot of programs like that for FHA. There's programs available for conventional. There's programs available for closing cost assistance for USDA. There's also closing cost assistance available for veterans for VA programs.
Awesome. Can I go back to one thing that you mentioned, by the way? We're talking about inflation and housing having driven that. And I think one of the things that people forget, and one of the conversations that I have a lot with people that are renting is they're stressed because their rent has gone up, and rents have gone up like crazy, just like everything else, right? And we know this, rents have gone up like crazy. One of the things that people don't necessarily understand in the conversations that I'm having is that owning your property is the easiest way to control your expenses on your rent, right? I mean, well, your rent, your mortgage, like it kind of inflation proofs that part of your life. Can inflation proof the grocery store, but it can inflation proof
Your
your
housing expense, your
mortgage.
housing
Yeah,
costs,
right.
absolutely. Yeah,
Absolutely.
you
I
may
think
not
people
have that
forget about
savings
that.
you rent year to year, or if you have a 6 month lease, then we may have to have a conversation in 6 months or 12 months or whatever it is. Or you've seen it too, where maybe the owner of the home is ready to sell the home or needs to sell the home, and you may not be ready for
And
that
you may
or
not be
want
ready to
that.
move. Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot that goes along with that. And then you talk about inflation, so again, moving again and all those things kind of creep back in. So yeah, for first time buyers that are in situations like that, that's what programs like this are really designed to help transition with, to help absorb some of the out of pocket expense to make it easier. That's the biggest hurdle, not just for first time buyers, but for all buyers. It's not credit right now. The credit as a nation right now, credit is very high. It has been for the last several years. Unemployment's been very low for the past several years. So work and income's
Right.
there, credit's good. The third hurdle is the big thing, the elephant in the room is the cash to close, is the down payment, 3%, 3.5%, 5% down payments. People are wanting to make bigger down payments now because prices have increased and rates are up. So
Right.
how do we get more towards that? This is a good way to help along with that.
Okay. Well, the other way to get more towards that is, taking a look at your current home and how much equity do you have in your current home? Because if you're not a first-time home buyer, if you already own a home, this is a pretty good opportunity to move up or move down. Your mortgage payment may move up some, but you're probably sitting in a pretty good equity position in your home to put a very large down payment on your next home.
On the next home, yes. That is a really good point because a lot of people are needing to move. If you've had open houses, you've seen people come through. I was at an open house
Most of them
last
have
week.
a home to sell. Yeah.
I everyone that came in, I'd say almost everyone. I don't know if it was 100%. If not, it was really, really close. When I was talking to them and asking them why they were moving, why they were looking, it was always size. My house used to be big enough, and now it's not. I thought I had a good size house, so it was that. So what comes along with that? So you have like a move up buyer, I guess,
Yeah.
and if you have equity there, which you would if you've purchased anything around where we're at in the most recent
Yeah. In the
number
last 5 years, well, no, ever really. I
pretty
mean,
much. So yeah, you're poised well to do that. And do you see more people that are selling right now? Is seller concessions? That seems to be something that's somewhat
definitely
available.
seeing seller concessions. Yeah, definitely seeing people willing to do that. The properties are, because we have slipped back. We still have historically low inventory. Well, no, that's not true. Historically low inventory was like January and February of 2021. Let's be clear. That was the historic, like it can't go any lower. There's literally nothing on the market.
Right.
But we're still in a low inventory position. And the buyer pool has slowed down too. I mean, we know we're definitely not seeing as many deals as we were before. Things are still moving. They're just taking a little bit longer. And you hit that 30 to 45 day mark on the market, and
Right.
people are getting nervous because they're still thinking it was going to sell in 2 weeks. And I mean, it's taking a little bit longer, but things are still moving.
Yeah.
There's no reason to be hitting the panic button right now.
Right. No, transactions are still transacting.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Hold on, I'm looking at my notes. Move down. Talk about the numbers, first time numbers. All right. So anything else you want to talk about? Yeah.
One thing. So just to that point, if you're out there and if you feel you have the ability to negotiate a seller concession, or you may want to do that, one of the better uses of that, typically, what that would mean is that we're going to ask a seller to contribute towards the buyer's closing cost, right? Not uncommon to do. But another use of that, and maybe right now a more effective use of that, given what's happened with interest rates, maybe if I'm the move-up buyer, right, and I have equity in my home, I'm going to sell my home, I'm buying my next house, I'm making a 20% down payment. But I'm going to ask if the seller can kick in a little bit in concessions. Why? Well, that money can not just be used to cover closing costs, but it can also be used to structure a buy down with the interest rate. And when we
Yes.
talk about payment relief, or looking at what the payment would be without a buy down versus, that can be something really substantial. Before we hopped on, I was just working up numbers for someone who's purchasing a home, $450,000, making a 20% down payment, borrowing $360K. The seller is going to kick in funds for the buy down, meaning that for the first 3 years, the buyer is going to make a payment less than what they would otherwise with the interest rate at the current market, say, for example, 6.5%. The first 12 months, the buyer is going to be making a payment equal to the interest rate being 3% less than where the market is. So
Wow.
3.5%.
That's huge.
It's about a huge, meaning about to the tune of about $800 per month less for the first 12 months. Second 12 months, the same as there, but it's a little bit less. It's a 2% buy down. So you're making a payment as if the rate was 4.5%, which saves to the tune of about $550 per month.
Okay.
Same for the third year, reduced by 1%. So paying as if it were a 5.5% rate and still saving a few $100 per month. So what you've done there is not just use that money to save on your payments for 36 months, but you also bought yourself some time to look at the situation. You made a really solid down payment coming in that was impactful. And now you've got equities in the house from day one, plus the 3 years of payments. Where are we at now, and where's the market at? And if it's a situation during that time where the buyer needs to restructure their loan or pay it off, maybe I have to go and it's time to move again, unexpected, they don't use that money. The funds from the buy down are used to pay the principal balance of the loan down at payoff. So it's not a benefit the buyer has to lose if they don't use it for the entire 3 years. And
Okay.
so it's another tool that can be used right now to combat what's happened with the market, to maybe combat what's happened with the rising price of the home, to help keep your payment in check and more affordable.
Awesome. Oh, I have one last question.
Yeah.
What do we think the rates are going to do this year? Get out your crystal ball.
That's a good question, right? Fair question. I think that the market is, what my hope is that the market does this year is offer stability. That's been the biggest challenge over the last couple of years. Hasn't necessarily been the increase in the rising rates. That kind of sucks that come along with it, but it's been the instability, and it's been just the way that you've got to be really hyper vigilant when looking at this, and it makes it just more difficult to structure an offer. It makes it harder for buyers to kind of see where they're at, and it's so much easier and nicer to know what all this is going to look like before you and I go look at properties, and we want to see what, I know what I can afford, I know what I want. Now it's time for the fun part to get on with it. It's so much nicer to be able to know what that looks like.
You're not trying to time it, and yeah, for sure.
When we're in this like overly volatile market, it's made that really difficult. And we can figure it out and go along with it, but it adds to just the stress and the extra weight of the whole thing. So my hope would be stability. If we just leveled off with rates, even while maybe realizing some give back and improving, that would be a good thing. But signs point to the market continuing to improve, meaning that interest rates decrease. We've seen that over December, at least. We've kind of held steady, and it's been a little choppy through January, and we took some hits this week. Unfortunately, it's been rough the last couple of days, but I think that is, if economic data and inflation data continues to cool, that's really positive. Interest rates on mortgages have always, with one exception, always directly correlate with mortgage interest rates. Inflation and mortgage rates, one's up, the other's up. If one's down, both are down. With exception to the pandemic, we were artificially keeping interest rates low so as not to cause the a huge recession while everything was like, while not much was happening at all. So that was the only time it didn't happen. Inflation was happening then, but rates were staying very low where they had been for that reason. Every other time besides that, with inflation going up, mortgage rates are going up. Down means down. So you just got to watch that trend. That's one indication, but there's a lot of other things involved in it too, obviously, that are outside of anyone's control, which you just kind of have to ride the wave and see. But I think that, the key drivers, and if the actions of the Federal Reserve are seen as being effective, then yes, it would continue to improve. If not, that's where there's a little panic, and that's where there might be some bumps in the road, just when you see something that maybe doesn't, numbers or data that just don't look as favorable as you'd like, then that's cause for concern. There can be panic, and you see little bumps and spikes along the way.
All right. Well, awesome.
So,
thank you so much.
say all that to say to be seen, right? TBD.
Yeah, TBD. Yeah, that crystal ball that you have, I don't know. Let's see how that works.
Right.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you. I'll talk to you.
Yeah. It's good seeing you.
You too. Bye.
Bye.